Welcome back to another episode of the Videostore Junkies podcast. We are talking about Mad Max yet again. This is our 5th episode on the series somehow because there are only 4 movies, but we had so much to say about Fury Road that we decided to break it up into 2 episodes. So if you're just joining us, if you haven't listened to part 1, I would advise that you go back. We talk a lot about the background and our interest in this movie. I think we're going to skip all of that this time and kind of jump right into it. And hey, if you haven't listened to any of our episodes, go way back to episode 1. We start with the first movie and we cover all the other ones, which we adore every single one of them completely. So let's jump in real quick.
Except for Alan.
I'm trying to slip that past.
I know. we just released the Beyond Thunderdome episode today, and I think every single tweet and everything that I've written has somehow slipped in the fact that one of us hate it with an undying passion. But anyways, speaking of hating Thunderdome with an undying passion, let's just introduce ourselves real quick, starting with Paul.
This is Paul Cardullo, and Thunderdome's my favorite movie ever. I did not say.
Perfect.
On the other hand, though, this one is really good.
Fair enough. Renee, how about you? Who are you, and is Thunderdome your favorite movie ever?
My name's Renee. You just said my name. I'm good, thanks. And I'm sorry, I was having a mouse problem.
You get an exterminator.
I know. Oh man. Yes. Thunderdome was the best movie ever. I love children. And yeah. Next.
Thank you, Renee, whose favorite subreddit is about children falling down and hurting themselves. Alan, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Alan, and Thunderdome was not my favorite movie. And neither was this. But we'll save the spoilers.
Yeah. Well, I think we got that idea last time, but we're gonna get into it when we do the ratings. It's gonna be interesting. Last but not least, Bill, how about you?
I like the part in Thunderdome where children get sucked down into the quicksand, but those moments were few and far.
What do you
between.
do for a living, by the way, Bill?
I teach children. I believe the children are the future. Teach them well, and the father's hell will slowly go by. And so I'm a high school science teacher. I'd call myself a professional podcaster, but I don't actually get paid.
I mean, if you were getting paid for any of this, then you could probably retire because you do, I think, 5 or 10 podcasts a week.
It adds up. It adds up, but there's so many movies and I have so much to say and no one's figured out a way to shut me up. So
it's true. Well, hey, we're recording you. We're getting you basically free labor out of you. So I appreciate
cool.
that.
Yeah,
it is.
Yay, socialism.
I think it's actually capitalism, Bill, but so
no. I've done the research, and in capitalism I'd actually get paid for this.
Okay. Well, we'll consider this a tipped job. So we'll put out a tip jar and I'll pay you whatever falls into that.
This is my ability, and from my ability you're getting. So yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I am Zachary. I love Thunderdome. If you go back and listen to our last episode, I actually don't love it, but I like it a lot. So, hey, let's jump right in. Like I said, I think last time we talked, we ended on kind of in the middle or early on in Act 2. So let's pick up there. Let's talk about, I think, unless anyone has anything to talk about the final part of the kind of last chase sequence, I think we can get into the Quagmire sequence.
Is the last chase sequence the part where the front of the truck catches on fire, or am I?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that actually one thing I did think that I loved about that was how Furiosa uses the cow catcher on the front of the car, on the front of the vehicle, to throw up dust to put out the fire. I mean, she uses
that's awesome.
And I thought that was like it's such a cool idea. I was like, oh wow, that was really cool. Anyway, just thought that was neat.
I assume that's what I assume that they get attacked by like napalm throwing bikers so much that's what it's for, because there aren't many cows out there, right?
No, how many cows could you catch?
They've caught them all.
There you go.
They caught them all. Well, speaking of cows, I think.
Hey, can I just ask? Is there a single kangaroo in any of the Mad Max movies?
Nah, not that.
No, I think they're all married.
Actually, there was one, but it was dead on the road. No.
Oh my God, Paul, you're killing me.
Should I get that? Because
I missed that
way
too.
over my head.
I should say it's been a really long week for me, guys, so I'm a little punchy tonight. So yeah, this is me unplugged. I'm sorry, Renee. You said that there was a dead one, right?
Wait, you're
There
not
was
going
a
to
dead one. I'm
explain the
sorry.
joke?
Yeah, please do, because I had a flashback of a dead kangaroo. So, yeah.
You said are there any single kangaroos? I said no, they're all married.
Oh, there you go. And that's what set him off. Wow.
Yeah. It's going to be a long night.
Again, it's been a very long week,
Yeah.
and I haven't been drinking, but I may as well have been, because that's about where I'm at right now. So yeah, speaking of wildlife, though, I think the only wildlife in this film, which is kind of unusual, the only thing I kind of didn't like about this movie was they didn't give Max a pet sidekick. Like in the second movie, he has a dog. In the third movie, he has a monkey that saves him. No sidekick in this movie, although we do get a lot of crows.
Well, for those of you that have listened to all of our podcasts, remember how I said I was happy when they shot the dog because it sort of made it so he didn't have to keep up with the dog. If not, hey, go back to episode whatever that was. But in this one, it would have been interesting to see what he did with a pet while he was on the front of that machine with the blood bag hooked up to him. Maybe he had a little leash or something.
I don't know what's more amazing, that you would think that, or that you would remind people that you think that.
I would love to see an alternate version of this where they have Max on there, like tied up to the blood bank, and then they pan over and his dog is tied to the hood, and it's like there's a war boy dog that is getting to.
Except the one on the front would have his tongue out and he'd be like, "This is great."
Yeah, right. You'd be like, "This is great. I love this." No,
yeah.
I love this sequence though, because it's kind of an interesting segue to the third act, but I love the fact that it kind of slows the movie down. Like literally it slows the chase down without really slowing the chase down, because we do get some of my favorite moments in the movie. I think one of my favorite characters who only really has a couple of lines, but the bullet farmer, as played by Richard Carter, who I believe I think this was his last movie. I believe he passed away 4 years after this movie was made. But I mean, talk about an amazing costume. The bullet cowl is probably my single favorite costume in this entire movie.
This whole sequence is like a little bit of a horror film slapped into the middle of a science fiction post-apocalypse.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you think, has George Miller ever done a horror movie? I mean, I guess Witches of Eastwick, maybe, sort of.
Yeah.
But not really. And you think, well, I bet he'd make a good one. And yeah, he almost made Justice League Dark, which sounded like it would have been.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Just amazing. Maybe it'll still happen. I don't know. But yeah, this was just a creepy little sequence. You're right. It does stop the film. And usually that's a problem with second and third acts, where suddenly we've got to have that twist. You can't be on the go. You can't be chase nonstop, although this comes pretty close sometimes. You got to do something to give the audience a chance to catch their breath. And that often just kills the film dead. Hello, Beyond Thunderdome. But this one, although it's a tonal shift, I think it really does work.
This is the section where they're walking through with the stilts, the stilt walkers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I like about that is at first when you see it, it's just like, wow, this is a creepy, neat little detail. And then later when you get to it comes back to be, no, this is something more important. So I really like, at first it's like, oh, it's this really kind of creepy, weird little thing. And then you find there's much more significance to it later. Now, the question is, I know normally I go, oh, I don't want to know the backstory, but in this case, since it actually does tie into the main story, is there more of a description of who the people of the stilts are and the coming of the crows? Is there a canon?
I was going to ask the same thing, because all I know is that they're called crowfishers.
Oh, hey, that's more than I know.
Yeah. So I did, like I said, read the script that you can get a hold of. And there's not really any more information, although the reason that they are called crowfishers is in the script. There's a scene where they are flying kites and the crows are attacking the kites, but the kites basically have like nets attached to them, and the crows get caught in the nets, and presumably they eat the crows. So that's why they're called, I guess, crowfishers. I didn't even realize that's what they were called, though.
What do the crows eat?
Probably other crows.
Okay, listen, let me just say right now, that doesn't work. Right?
I'm just saying.
Are like,
hey.
you are like one of my students who is willing to die on the hill, insisting that a chicken could lay eggs and then eat those eggs and live a full, happy chicken life. And I'm explaining to him that'd be like spitting into a cup and drinking it and thinking you're never going to die of thirst, which he also insisted was a viable option.
Oh.
And I said, there's just no talking to you. And we ended the conversation.
Well, that area is kind of swampy, isn't it? Isn't
What?
it?
Well, yeah, you would think there'd be like frogs or.
There's stuff in the swamp. They pick things out of the swamp and eat.
Well,
them.
then what's everyone complaining about? That sounds like you could live there. I mean, if it's got a food chain, just put yourself at the top and everything's fine.
Well, the only thing is, like they mention, and when we get to the women, they mention that was the green place and it got destroyed. And I always assumed that it was like Fallout or something, but in the script, it almost makes it sound like the ground actually, like there was oil or something that came out of the ground and it basically killed everything. And that's what the kind of swamp area is actually supposed to be.
See, Exxon has been saving us all these years by getting that filthy poison out of the ground. And did we ever think to thank them? No.
Yeah.
I assume that it was green and they just like, as humans often do, we just like we stripped it away until there was nothing left. And because it's pretty sad when you think about it. I know I'm overthinking these things, like what do the crows eat, but if that was green and now it turns into that hellhole, this awfulness here, what future do humans have? Everything's getting worse. The war's over, but things are still falling apart, and it's like we're just fighting over the scraps. And Barter Town will pop up, but that doesn't last long. And they had some green stuff here, and now they're eating crows. And is the end of the movie really a happy ending, or are they just going to, 2 days later they drank all the water? It's like, oh, that's why we had to ration it. Nah.
Oh God.
Actually, that's one of the things I really like about it is, in the other ones, it's there is this great place off in the distance we're going to go to. And that's where they're going to go. And so you're thinking in this one, and the end of the film is going to be, they're going to be heading off to the green place. And they go through this, which is, like, wow, it's creepy and neat. And when she gets there and they find out you already went through it, and that realization that Furiosa has, and then the audience has, like, oh, fuck. Yeah. Now where do we go in the movie? Because you're thinking of it as a road trip. You're heading to, you got a destination, the green place. Oh fuck, there ain't a green place. What do we do now? And I love that, and I love then you get that turn. And we're kind of jumping ahead a bit, but that turn where she says, "Well, okay, hey, there's water and food back that way. Let's go." So
just like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, she figured out that her happiness was really home all along.
Yeah, and that's actually like one of the points that I think I have about this movie, because a lot of people complain, or I don't know about a lot of people, but I've heard people complain about this movie and complain about the fact that Furiosa is kind of almost more of a character than Max is. And this is kind of what I think makes that work and why that works for me so well, because you have her kind of looking forward to this. She is looking forward to going back home. She thinks that there is a place where she can be safe. And we really couldn't have that arc with Max, because I think Max is kind of along for the ride. I think anything that they tried to shoehorn in about him having like hope of some sort of utopia, or thinking that there is some place that he can go to be safe, I think would actually not jive with his character. So I think I actually kind of like the fact that a lot of that kind of emotional weight is put on her, both the expectation of going to a place that they will be safe, and then when she finds out that that place no longer exists.
No, I agree. And I think Max can't be the main character anymore, because his arc is played out. We can only have so many movies where he starts out as a loner and then comes to care about a ragtag group of people and finds the inner hero within. It's like, dude, how many times you got to learn this lesson? So now he's more like the Clint Eastwood character in the Man with No Name films, where he's the catalyst for someone else to have their arc. And that's fine by me, especially if it's got visuals like this one does.
Yeah, and I think that works really well here. One other thing I wanted to mention, because I was looking back through the script, and I think someone mentioned this. I think it was maybe Paul or Alan mentioned last time about Morton Joe calling the Bullet Farmer and the People Eater brothers. I think that you were actually right. I think that they are actually supposed to be brothers.
Oh,
because
okay. Oh, cool.
yeah, in the script, it is like, I think in the movie he just calls them brothers, but in the script there is some dialogue in this section of the movie between Furiosa and Max, which I'm kind of glad they cut, because it's kind of that exposition, two characters kind of talking to give you background that you don't really need. But there is a line in there about I think she's telling him, like, these are her the three brothers, and the leader of Gastown and the leader of the Bullet Farm. So I don't know, maybe it's still not supposed to be like their biological brothers, but I thought that was kind of interesting that someone mentioned it, and then the script almost seems to infer that was actually correct. So
oh, cool. Yay!
I like that though. Because it's got that cool mythic quality. The whole story: Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and the idea of brothers divvying up the spoils and having their own little kingdoms. That's pretty cool.
Right, and like the gods, each one has their own specialty.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
And that means when they come together, it's because some serious shit gone down. So were people really upset about Furiosa? I mean,
well,
she's such a cool character.
The people who complain about this movie, that is like the number one complaint that I've heard. I don't know if it's like that. That's anecdotal, but it is something that I've heard a lot of people say. And I don't know. I mean, to me, like, if there are people saying that, then they probably haven't seen the other Mad Max movies, because that's not too far off of the Road Warrior, honestly, in my opinion. It's just to a slightly greater extent in this movie. But
I don't think any of the other Road Warrior movies really even had a really strong secondary protagonist to, and so again, it would get a little tiresome. I thought she's a great character. Now, that being said, I'm not really looking forward to the Furiosa movie because it's a prequel, and I don't see where we get any kind of good arc out of that, because we know how it ends. If the whole movie is going to be waiting for her to lose her arm, I'll pass on that. And it's like, is this? I would do that though. I think I said this last time, but I still think it's a funny joke. I literally would have the entire movie her getting into positions where it looks like she's going to lose her arm, and then somehow she pulls it off at the last minute. But we know it's going to end. It's going to end badly. I don't get that. I didn't like. I knew it was a problem with Solo. I knew it was it's a problem with this. I don't know why the folks who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars don't see the problem here. Make another Furiosa movie, please, but make it 10 minutes after this one ends.
Again, my way to fix that is you have like a secondary character who's like her sidekick or something. So you keep expecting the sidekick to die. But what happens is at the end, the character we think is Furiosa dies, and the sidekick, who's like a fuck up or whatever, just like takes your name, and so it's like, oh, all along that was Furiosa. I mean, that's the only way you could get any sort of surprise out of this movie. Yeah, I know. I didn't say it was a good one. I just said.
Well, no. I mean, I don't know that would go over well. I don't know, and here's the problem. Actually, Paul, that's actually a cool idea. And if this were the 1980s, you could do that. The problem is everyone's going to know the big plot twist before the movie even comes out, because we live in a society where people just can't wait 2 seconds after the last episode of WandaVision. People are posting about it on Facebook because they suck. And
sounds like you're bitter from experience there, Bill. But
yep.
No, that's why I stay off the internet as much as possible. I have not watched that show yet. I'm going to binge it, so no spoilers, please.
Oh, dude, you're going to love it when the Silver Surfer shows up. It's unbelievable. It's so unexpected. God damn. I nearly fell out of my chair.
Oh,
oops.
There's some cool stuff with the Quagmire. I mean, there's actually there's a sequence I love in this bit.
Well, take it away. Tell us about it.
Oh, well, I mean, it's sort of, it's towards the end of it. I mean, it's when the when the Bullet Farmer is racing towards them, and they're in danger, and Max goes off, and then there's like an explosion, and Max comes back carrying everything. So like you're expecting to see like him battle up against him. You're expecting, and no, you see explosion. And he kind of walks in, and he's dragging like all the stuff and drops it down. He's covered in blood, and then they're like, "That's not his blood." And I just love that whole bit
Now,
because it's like,
is there anyone else who sees a total reference in that scene to a classic movie, a Japanese movie? Yes, Son of Godzilla. And no,
Oh, yeah.
in the Seven Samurai, there's the scene where they've got the bandits are surrounding them. There's only seven, spoiler alert, of them, and there's like 40 bandits, and that's too many. The odds are bad. And there's the one guy who's the expert swordsman. He's like the Wolverine type, quiet, deadly, and he basically just sort of goes off on his own, and he's gone for a while, and they're concerned about what might happen to him, and then all of a sudden he just walks back the next morning. He's got like 3 or 4 swords in his hand, just sort of drops them on the ground and says, killed 4, goes off, takes a nap. I love that. It was off screen. He doesn't brag about it. He doesn't like, oh, you should have been there. Oh, they came at me. And no, he just, went out, did his job as he's supposed to do, comes back, needs a nap. It was an exhausting night. And great, because you had to make in your head, what was it like? And it's pretty cool in my head.
Yeah, no, it's been so long since I went through a Kurosawa phase about 20 years ago, and I need to revisit a lot of his stuff. Yeah, no, that's interesting. That I would assume that was probably an intentional reference because he's talked about being influenced by Kurosawa after the first movie. So,
but you're right, Paul. That is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. That little bit there, not his blood. Yeah.
Yeah, I do love the trope of having action sequences happen off screen. I do really love that. I know that there are like, it's not a great movie, but I think it's like one of the Mission Impossible movies where they set up like, oh, we're going to do this big heist in this like maximum security facility, and it's going to be so hard to get in. And then like, I think they just show them like going in, and then the next scene is them just running out, and it's just I don't know. I kind of love that trope.
Was this the part when he comes back where he throws Nux the wheel in the boot, or does that happen later?
Yeah, nope, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it? Oh, yeah. I really loved that moment. That was sweet.
Well, I think this is when Nux also really kind of makes the full switch to being part of this group, right? Isn't it? Because he's the one who helps pull them out, doesn't he? He's the one.
Yeah. Well, they think that he's like running away, but then they realize that he's trying to get the winch out, get the chain out, and put it on the tree. I actually do have one other thing. Again, like reading the script, there was actually a sequence that was cut from this right around the time. I think it's actually supposed to be the Crow people, or maybe it's just other people that live in the swamp. But there is a short action sequence where they are attacked by people on gyrocopters. They call them, I think, roto raiders. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's there are like a couple of guys who like drop napalm on them, and they like I think they like harpoon one and pull them down. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. Obviously, I don't think it was even filmed, but it would have been almost a callback to Road Warrior. So, did anyone catch there are about 10 frames of actual footage from the very first Mad Max film in this movie?
No. I noticed there was a bulging eye sequence, which is kind of a running gag through the film series, but I don't know if that was any part of it or not.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that before, and this time, rewatching the movies and going back, I was like, I wonder, that looks so familiar. And I went back, and lo and behold, it is literally the exact same footage from when Toe Cutter is getting right before he gets hit by the semi truck in Mad Max.
Amazing.
It's literally the same footage.
Oh, that's great.
I thought that was kind of funny because it can be taken as he's kind of having just this weird dream. And again, like in the script, there's actually more to that scene because he has this weird dream where he looks down and he has the body of a woman. But then it can also be taken as he's having a flashback, even though there are no other references really to the other movies. You could almost say he's having a flashback to that, like the first time he actually went out over the edge. So, and then we get to the kind of a pivotal moment. We've already kind of mentioned it, but the Vuvolini and Furiosa's people.
They were great.
Does anyone? Yeah. Does anyone want to? Yeah. No. Take it away.
No, that was it. I thought it was great when they pulled up. I thought, he calls like that's a trap. Yeah. It was great. It was just a group of badass ladies.
I will say, you know, as much as I don't like the idea of prequels, and Bill, I agree with you. It's very troubling to do a prequel and really have any surprises. If it involves like this tribe of women, if it's just a movie about them, I'm actually all in, because I think that they were one of my favorite parts of the movie, especially like the keeper of the seeds, who by the way, played by Melissa Jaffer, who incidentally also had a small part in The Cars That Ate Paris, which I think makes her like the third Mad Max actor to be in that movie. So
again, I'm trying to figure out their place in the world. I don't know. I always try to figure out if any of this makes sense. Partly because I'm really into the concept, if not the reality, of surviving in harsh times, survivalism and prepping and all that stuff. And I don't do it, but I like to. I'm interested in those who do. It's like, how do these women survive? What do they eat? Where do they live?
They eat crows.
They eat crows and they live in sand.
Well, I just assumed, aren't they kind of scavenging from these people that they're coming across, or pillaging, I guess? I don't know.
Again, I saw this as if you remember in the last movie, I said I think part of the reason that they went and found all those children was so that they had some other people to shoot at or kill or something. But, I saw that a little bit in this too. There's a lot of women there, so that we need a few more deaths, and we're kind of out of main characters to kill, so let's get some.
Oh, bring some fresh meat in, as it were.
Yeah,
from a storytelling point of view, but in terms of, I guess, the world where they live. They
well, yeah, this one, it made sense. You're going to this green place and you get there. Obviously, there should be people there, and yeah. So I like that better than the I like them better than the children in the last one.
Yeah, yes. So from what Furiosa says, it sounds like she left them about 20 years ago. In the story, when she says how many nights, I can't remember what the exact number was, but it came to like 19 or 20 years that she had left the group. So we know at least 20 years ago they were in the green place, and so there they could have been farming or whatever. I just figured they were like Bedouin and they're eating lizards and things like that. Aside from the
two-headed lizards,
yeah. And I assume they had tents that they carried with them and used those. This is kind of what I went with, because they had that sort of Bedouin look.
That sort of makes sense. The weird thing is that we have this big world here, and yet, in a sense, this is a small journey. How really well hidden could they be when they're only a truck drive away from the Citadel and all these other places? Who don't seem to even be aware that they exist.
Wasn't it a couple days at least drive, or was it just one?
It was like 2 days.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's probably also somewhere nobody really wants to go. So you leave the desert, you go through this storm, you get through that swamp, and the only thing on the other side is more desert.
Yeah.
So
hey, there's some tasty crows.
And crows, yeah. I guess the food supply.
Yeah.
And I guess obviously they had been run out of the green place, right? They're further than the green place, because that, when they said,
yeah,
well, if you saw that, you've already been there. So they've sort of been driven out. I guess they could have gone the other way, but there's desert, or this way and there's desert. Yeah. But
it feels like the Citadel should be the one that's under attack all the time. That anyone who's still left alive in Australia has probably heard about this place that has endless amounts of water, greenery, actual food, and at least 6 or 7 good-looking women. And they would be hitting this place all the time.
When you think about it, though, they have a pretty good position, right? Because it's basically a fortress that's impossible to get into.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to go up on this giant platform that they winch up a few hundred feet in the air, and then they have all the food and water up there. So pretty much impenetrable. You really couldn't siege it.
Well, and there's boundless numbers of war boys.
Right. And what are the war boys for? You think, well, they
for making war.
Places. What other places are there to scavenge? There's nothing. They've got the best thing there is. In fact, they've got all there is. There's nothing for them to go to war at, but there is something for them to protect.
Mm-hmm.
So, are the war boys just there to fend off the enemies of the Citadel, which would make Joe a heroic character to the people there that he divvies the water to and everything. Maybe that's the backstory we don't get.
Well, I mean, I think arguably they are after the one resource that they don't have, which is healthy people, right? I mean, they're trying to find women to have kids, women that are healthy, and they're trying to find healthy like men just to use as blood banks.
That is a good point. Yes.
So it's almost this biological resource that they're after. Because everyone there is pretty much sick or dying or.
So I wonder if this area, this hellhole Australia here, is dotted with little tiny oases, little villages, little groups of people that are managing to survive and everything. But periodically, out of the wasteland comes the war boys to rape and pillage and take out what little they have, and this is, the women just haven't yet been found. Although it looks like they could pretty much hold their own out there. They clearly have been fighting battles because they're just too battle hardened not to have done so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the impression I got is there's really just nothing else that they have that would be worth trying to get. And like Alan said, I mean, it's kind of a trek to get there. And also, I mean, remember, like there are people who have lived in these conditions for thousands of years, like in the real world, and survived. So it's not impossible. I mean, you can survive in the desert, you can get food, you can get water, you just have to know how to find it. So presumably these are the people that have survived because they figured out how to live in this post-apocalyptic society or lack of society.
There's not many of them left.
Yeah.
Is this supposed to be the sum total of the Vovolini? That's a handful.
I think
just
so,
a
yeah.
handful of people.
I think it's all that were left. Yeah, I think they're implied that there used to be a much bigger group. In fact, doesn't she even say that? Doesn't Furious ask them, I thought?
I think one of them says we're all that's left.
Who was the naked woman? Did I miss? Did she continue to be a part of the story? And I just
she put her clothes on.
Okay.
And all the men forgot who she was.
Lost interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't recognize
she
you.
put her clothes on and came down and talked to her. I think she was like one of the first ones that she talked.
She was, yeah.
She's actually one of the main characters.
Yeah, I believe she is credited as the Valkyrie, played by Megan Gale.
Okay, I guess I just had the impression that almost all the main characters were significantly older.
Yeah, no, I think she's the young one who you may also remember her from Project Runway Australia. So.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah. The first time you watch this, you don't really know what's going to happen because they take off, and then we kind of have the twist where Max is, not necessarily putting his neck out, but he's basically saving them because he's been traveling around for probably going on 20 years now. And he knows that there's basically no way that they can survive out there because there is nothing out there.
Yeah. It's interesting because, he even opens the film with his sole instinct is to survive. And it's kind of, how he starts every movie.
Yeah.
But he always ends up putting himself in a position where he's going to sacrifice himself for other people.
I don't know. In a way, this is almost a little more selfless, though, than his turn in The Road Warrior. Because in The Road Warrior, he's stuck in the atoll or whatever, and he basically, there's no way to get out, right? And that's when he offers to drive the truck because his car has been destroyed. But, here they leave his
dog.
They killed his dog. Exactly. He has nothing to live for. Whereas here he has supplies. He has a bike. Like they've left him what he needs to at least survive for a little while. But he still decides to go and kind of, turn them around.
Which brings up a problem I kind of have. I realize why they had to do it because we can't have a totally happy ending. But to me, the ending, and I know I'm shooting ahead here, but the ending makes little sense to me. Why does Max leave?
Oh no, I actually love. Let's save that because I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think it works well for his character, but yeah.
Well, I would just like to quickly throw out that your phones are listening to you because over the past, right after we recorded part 1, Amazon suggested to me a large stash of seeds, and 2 days later, it was a mini circular saw.
Wow. I thought
Yeah.
you were going to say like Fury Road DVDs, but that's a lot funnier.
it was
That's way
much
more
better.
specific.
Yeah.
Why are we not terrified by this?
Yeah.
I'm
So
just
I
waiting
have
for
both now.
I'm surprised that Amazon. Oh, of course. I'm surprised that Amazon hasn't recommended me a bunch of like spray icing, but um, then we get to, like I said, the kind of the climax. Although to call it a climax, I mean it lasts for 20 minutes, but we get and we've talked. We spent a lot of time on the last episode talking about chases and all the action sequences. But I think that this one does warrant some additional call outs because there are like, it's funny because you spend the first half of the film just on the edge of your seat, white knuckled, and you assume that is like, you get your breather, but you assume like, man, that was amazing, but what are they going to do now? And then they crank it up to like 11 and somehow they still manage to save all of the best for last.
Oh, I was just gonna, I don't know what my favorite of all the chases in this long chase movie are. It's hard to say what my favorite is, but definitely in this last 20 minutes, the stakes are high because the initial chase is, one group trying to get away, the other trying to chase them down. One's definitely got more at stake than the other. But in this one, once Joe realizes what's going on, it's two groups in a race for survival. Whoever gets there first wins everything, and whoever comes in second loses everything. So things, they've amped up the stakes quite a bit, which makes it pretty cool.
That's actually a good point. Like very often you have the stakes are that if the villain succeeds, then something terrible will happen. But if he fails, there won't necessarily be any consequences. He'll just fail, and then he'll have to come up with hatch another plan. Whereas in this one, he literally, he does actually lose, just stand to lose everything. So that's kind of interesting. Renee, did you have some stuff?
I was just going to say that I thought it was very sad that those poor little ladies just got picked off like fish in a barrel. Boy, that was sad. But
sad but predictable.
It really was, because it's like, you don't belong here. What's happening?
Yeah. Well, plus we just needed some people to die, so
they might as well have had red
just
shirts.
Like Alan said.
Yes.
I look for the people that are going to get shot.
Listen, if you're like
trying to pick them out,
if you're introduced 3/4 of the way through and you're carrying around a big box of seeds that you keep talking about, one day this will bring the world back and everything. It's like, lady, I got news for you. You are not going to see that day, but you will last long enough to pass that box on to someone. Right before your eyes roll up into your head. I can almost see it now. She was a cool character, though. I do like the idea. I mean, that would be me in the apocalypse for the limited amount of time that I'd be there, carrying a bunch of like flash drives.
I was going to say it would be like
seeds.
like Godzilla DVDs trying to preserve the last of the recorded media.
Yeah. Bill would be carrying around little containers of latex. He's like, you can use this for makeup for movies.
Everything.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
It's spirit gum. It'll stick forever.
It'll make it stick.
Gum. That's funny. Spirit gum doesn't stick to shit. Let me tell you.
Oh, I don't know. Ask my son when he was little. For Halloween he wanted to be a werewolf, and
no.
Yeah, no. So I had spirit gum and like an old like crappy wig thing and cut it up and spirit gum to his chest and face, and
they must have tested out spirit gum on Paul's son, and it's like, hey, it sticks to this kid, it'll stick to everybody. But he's the only one it ever stuck to.
I'm guessing that he looked like I do when I roll over onto my pillow after my cat has been shedding.
It wasn't bad, but
oh my god,
like that for a while afterwards, though, because
so for those out there in the audience, so here's the tip: spirit gum is basically pine tar. It's the cheapest stuff on earth. But what's less cheap is spirit gum remover, and you damn well better buy some spirit gum remover. But don't, because here's the secret there: that stuff is, go find baby oil and rubbing alcohol. Now, don't drink the rubbing alcohol. Don't ask me why. 50-50 mineral oil or baby oil, whatever, either comes from minerals or babies. The point is it's oil. 50-50, the oil and the rubbing alcohol, and you've got spirit gum. Now you're saying, Bill, that sounds like it should cost about 3 cents a gallon. Indeed it does, but that's not what they sell it for. But yeah, that's what it is. They are the biggest criminals on earth, the people who sell makeup stuff. Them and anyone in the music industry, also magicians. Yeah.
Anyways, back to Mad Max Fury Road. Let's steer this war rig back on track by I'll call out a couple of the things that I love. I have like a long list of notes, but just there are so many little things about the sequence, and I think we mentioned this last time, but it's like the over, like the sequences, the action, they're all incredibly well put together, but I think the thing that really makes this movie stand out is just all of the little touches. I will say the spitting gasoline into the intake to make the cars go faster.
Yeah.
Love it.
I wonder if that would work, spitting gasoline into your engine.
You're going to try to find out.
Worth a try.
I just want to jump back to something that I noticed before this part, was just that we were talking about little details. When Max is actually making a map, remember, he has like it's almost like a little toothpick, and he has like a little tiny piece of cloth or something, and he's actually plotting on a map, which I thought was really kind of cool. I don't know. I like that.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because they were basically driving in a straight line the whole time.
A straight line. I was just going to say, this isn't like the Normandy invasion. I mean,
no. Remember, she takes a hard left at one point.
Oh, that's true.
This is one of the few times when it actually would make sense to just yell Leroy Jenkins and just go straight ahead as fast as you can.
Isn't this like the monkey tracking Max though in Beyond Thunderdome? Like you can just follow the tracks back.
Yeah, I mean it's I mean they could basically say, okay, it's about this far as the crow flies, and also as far as we're driving, because it's just a straight line. So
we go back through the swamp and then through the canyon and then pretty much a straight line to the Citadel. Is everyone with me?
Then through the Death Storm.
Well, maybe the canyon was a little bit more windy than we thought. Maybe there were branches we didn't notice. See?
One other thing that I kind of liked, especially after I mean I liked it before, but I kind of liked the fact that it had more context, because I think it was Bill who mentioned last time that with the Lancers kind of reminded you of harpooning like a whale. And it's kind of funny because then when they're driving back through the War Boys, and they actually have all of these like wreckers or tow trucks, and they are firing harpoons into the war rig, trying to slow it down, which is essentially, exactly what they would do with, I think whalers, they would harpoon them, but then they would have the, they would attach barrels to them to tire them out. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
This is when they drop the dredges down too, right? Where they'd harpoon it and then the dredges.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Yeah, so they're not just slowing it down with their vehicles; they're actually trying to bite into the ground with the vehicles themselves, which I thought that's really.
And then obviously we talked about it. We mentioned it last time, but the guys on the poles,
the polecat.
I mean, they're the best.
There was just so much going on in that. It was you couldn't describe that to someone in the amount of, much like this podcast, you couldn't describe it to somebody in the amount of time you could see it. It was just so much and so much detail, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Obviously, this whole chase is a very horizontal action scene. And I love the fact that they basically added verticality to it by putting these guys on poles and just having them swing around the whole time.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, we mentioned last time that they were from Cirque du Soleil, were they not?
Stop.
Yes, they were been traveling around when the bombs dropped, and they had formed a troupe of roving circus cannibals. Oh, you mean in real life?
Yes, in real life.
I don't know. Is that true?
What? You don't know? You guys are like the goodness gracious. Yes, I believe the whole idea came from they knew guys from Cirque du Soleil who did this pole work, and they were like, "Oh, I wonder if we could, we could use this." And they ended up, and hence the polecats were born. Because originally they were going to try to do like, I mean, I think they still, from what I've seen in the back in some of the extra material, they do use some green screen where it's not actually moving, or when they're doing some of the things, but some of the stuff is done at speed, or slower speeds, but they're actually on moving vehicles. And originally they were going to try and like kind of fake it in. And I was like, no, we can actually put a real guy up here, and he has most of the control of it. I mean, there are the guys on the bottom at the counterweight, but the person up top has a lot of the control and can let go and drop off of it and so forth. So yeah.
It makes sense. I mean, if you need stuntmen to do something like that, Cirque du Soleil would be the people you'd look for. I mean, just like if I had a roach infestation in my kitchen, I'd see if anyone from Riverdance was available.
Well, it reminds me of the Dark Crystal, because like in the Dark Crystal, if you remember the Land Striders, which are the run, that came about because they had some stuntmen that had like stilts on their feet, and then they're like, hey, can you put them on your hand? It was just sort of like this. Hey, it wasn't written originally to be in there. It was like noticing, hey, wait, can you do this? Oh, that's cool. Oh, I wonder if we could build a costume around you and have you run full speed with this. It was the same kind of thing. Like, hey, there's this really cool thing these people do, these polls. Let's write that in and make this to be a really kind of cool thing from it.
I would have loved to have been at the lunch or whatever it was when they started throwing out ideas. Because all the things that we keep talking about, wouldn't it be cool if like they harpoon the truck and then they put dredges in the sand? Yeah, write that down. And we got guys on poles swinging. Oh, great, write that down. And there's a guy with a guitar spitting out fire. Okay, you've had enough to drink.
I like the guys on the poles going, back and forth, but I kind of got caught up in like what they were doing was so cool. Like I kind of lost track of what their purpose was. I mean, were they supposed to like, okay, if a car comes up beside me, I can pole vault onto that car?
Yeah, they were trying to get the women. They were trying to reach into the cab and get the women out.
Okay. So sort of like cherry pickers from the side or so. I mean, but it seemed like they had a lot of the pole guys for just that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were doing that in the scene. I'm not saying that's they were like, oh, let's build some poles to really quick to kidnap these women. But I'm saying like I think that's what they were doing. But they're also used as basically like a boarding party because they were kind of jumping off the poles onto the back of the war rig as well. So it's basically like if you're in the old like pirate movies where they would get on a rope and swing across to the other ship. Basically the same idea.
It made absolutely no sense in those movies, and it makes about as much sense here. But yeah, at this point, boy, at this far into the movie, I'm just along for the ride.
Right.
If it's not completely violating the laws of God and physics, like say any Too Fast, Too Furious movie, I'm sure. Why not? Of course, that's what they would do. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And speaking of violating the laws of physics, I think my favorite. For some reason, I just love this so much. It's just a split second. But when Max falls and Furiosa catches him by the leg and he's like dangling upside down beside the cab, and then Nux comes up and just like kicks him into the front of the other car, and he lands. He like goes like he does like a 180 and lands on the People Eater's truck.
Yeah,
for some reason, that one moment,
cool.
like if I have to pick one stunt in the entire movie that I love the most, it's that one.
Yeah.
He'd have to be kicking like Chuck Norris to make that work, but
yeah. No idea how much that was real, how much was CGI, but I think I love it because it's so hard to tell. It looks like a real stunt. So
it turns out that a stuntman who worked for Cirque du Soleil had an 8-week training program for the pole boys there, the pole cats.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, yikes.
I also read it was almost very awkward because they almost hired someone who had experience in another type of pole work, and that would have been a much different movie. But anyways, other things I love.
Wow.
I also love the fact near the end of this when Max, and I think we talked last time. One of the few things I don't love about this movie is when he's having the flashbacks to the kid and he keeps putting his hand up and that's what saves him. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that, but at this point it's like, man, I don't even care. But then the whole fight scene with him when he's near the end where he's like kind of on the front of the car and he's kind of fighting between the truck and the Giga Horse. And again, I think I mentioned last time, I love the score so much for this. But my favorite part, and I love this, occasionally other movies do this, and I love it. The action or the music is actually synced to the action. So if you watch and you listen, like all the beats are like anytime someone hits, like someone will hit someone and there'll be a beat, and then that person will fall down and hit the truck and there'll be a beat. I don't know. I love that so much.
Yeah.
I did not notice that, but it was an amazing score. Oh my
Well,
goodness.
now you need to go watch the entire film again
I do.
just to notice that. So I gave you an excuse.
The good news is it'll take less time than listening to our podcast. So
Exactly. It's one of those things. I think it was like the second or third time through that I actually noticed that. But it's yeah, again, another cool little detail. Oh yeah, and then also the sound, the sync is also when he's fighting the Doof Warrior, and the sound of the guitar as it's like hitting things is actually kind of part of this.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Doof Warrior, if we have no other details about this, we talked about that crash where kind of the last thing we see is the guitar coming out at the camera, like a kind of 3D effect. What we did not talk about last time, and we talked a lot about the troubled production. It took a long time for this movie to actually get into production to begin with, and then the film was originally supposed to have, I think, 140 filming days, and that got cut down to like 100, and somehow they ended up filming for months and months and months. But the interesting thing is that the film was actually basically it was cut short, and at one point I think it was because I didn't write down the names. Basically, there were a couple of people kind of vying for control at Warner Brothers, and the guy who was in charge at the time basically told them, eventually he just gave them an ultimatum, or basically just told them, you have to shut down production. I think it was like he gave them a specific date. He said, on this day you run out of money and you can no longer film. So this crash scene at the end of this was actually filmed much later, because, and I think it may have been almost a year, because Margaret Sixel, who we mentioned is the editor and won an award for an Oscar for this, she mentioned that they were editing the movie for almost a year, basically without a beginning and an ending. And so what happened was they basically, I mean, they had gone over budget, I think, but basically they were told, hey, you got to quit filming. And they hadn't filmed any of the intro at the Citadel, and they hadn't filmed any of the end at the Citadel either.
Wow. So
basically they were just editing this film that had no beginning and no end.
Oh, wow.
So this is kind of one of those things where it was I guess a lucky turn of events that the person who at the time was at the head of Warner Brothers got ousted, and this other guy came in, and I guess he looked at what George Miller had, and he basically told him that he would give him enough money to go film the beginning and the end of the film. Obviously the right choice at the time and after. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting that this movie, it's like, there are some movies that you hear about the troubled production, and then when you watch it, you're like, yeah, I could see how this movie, it's awkward, or it's not put together well, or sometimes it's obvious that they went back and reshot stuff. But in this movie, I would not have guessed any of that if I hadn't read it.
Right. So was this considered like a troubled production? I mean, I'm trying to remember back when it was coming out, were people predicting doom for this? I seem to recall there was some rumbling in the press about how the budget had gone so far over, it was extravagant, and basically the same stuff they said right before Avatar came out, and then they promptly forgot they ever said it after it made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Although this didn't do Avatar type money, but I guess it did pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it obviously, with Hollywood accounting, there's no telling how much it
lost
costs.
All the money that's ever been minted. Yeah.
Yeah. The number that I've seen is like 150 million, which, I've read that it may have been higher than that. I think that the thing that kind of kept this one from being talked about, because I mean, the one that I always remember is obviously Waterworld, which was, the original over budget, or not the original, but in the 90s, it was the big over budget film. And this movie was filmed so far away from Hollywood and so far away from that whole ecosystem. I think that was the only thing that really insulated it from being something that was talked about as being like basically a future bomb like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically, we talked about he was out in Namibia for however like 9 months. And, if the executives really wanted to get a hold of him, they had to fly out there and, take a helicopter out into the middle of nowhere to talk to him. So in a way, I almost wonder if that kind of, instead of filming in Hollywood where, someone could hang over his shoulder every day, he was kind of insulated from that and therefore kind of insulated from the media getting hold of this as an over budget film that was going to bomb. One of the quotes that he had that I really liked was something like, when you're making a movie, you are thinking about it every day, and then you are going to bed at night and dreaming about it. It basically becomes all consuming. And then when you are a studio executive, you're thinking about that movie for 10 minutes on a Wednesday morning. Something to that effect. So I kind of like that. He obviously, he obviously, he's worked in the studio system. Warner Brothers has released, I think, all of the films since The Road Warrior. Obviously, he's not one of these people who has completely bucked the system, but then he also kind of understands that play between the creative forces behind the films and the people who are kind of, have the purse strings. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. We'll also note that he actually, I think he has the rights to Mad Max now, because speaking of Warner Brothers, he was going to direct Contact, which I believe was like 97, and ultimately ended up being directed by Robert Zemeckis. And I think he was actually under contract to direct that, but for some reason they wanted Zemeckis to direct it. So basically the deal that he made was he got the rights to Mad Max in return for stepping away from that, which I thought was actually really cool. Yeah. Which, hey, Contact is, it's a fine movie, but ultimately I think he probably got the better part of that deal.
Yeah, that's surprising to me that they would. Hollywood's such a weird place.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, it does kind of make sense, just because at the time, that movie came out in 97 and the last Mad Max film had come out 12 years prior. And basically there was no revenue in the franchise since then, right? There were no like spinoffs. There was no, there were no video games. There were no action figures. So they probably saw it as something, other than like home video sales, they probably didn't see it as like a way that they could continue to make money. So
he didn't come out with this one until almost 20 years later as well. So I think it was a good investment actually on their part to say,
yeah,
okay, take it. Cause they ended up nothing happened with it for 30 plus years. So,
well, the whole thing's bizarre. They having to come up with some way of buying off. So we want one of the world's great filmmakers to not make the movie we wanted them to make. So here, we'll give you the rights to this, even though we'll probably regret this, said the guy who was probably the same one who said, M&M's in the movie E.T.? Nay, nay. Oh, no, we don't want to have Barbie in Toy Story. All these terrible decisions they make. What's that? George Lucas will take a pay cut if we let him have control of the dolls? What a fool! Yeah. Give it to him before he changes his mind.
Well, again, I don't think this was really a bad business decision for them. It was almost 20 years later. The person who made the decision's probably retired at this point. And it wasn't like...
that's true.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah.
Like
You're not
5
wrong.
years later and made it, and they made 5 more films. And, no, he waited almost 20 years. They're like, sure, go ahead. Good deal for them.
The only people in Hollywood who ever think more than 2 years in the future is like Disney. It's like, what's that? The copyright on Mickey Mouse is going to run out in 10 years. Quick, go buy Congress. Make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny you mentioned E.T. because obviously there can be a lot of money made in not directing films, because wasn't there someone who was originally gonna direct E.T. or something, and then they basically Spielberg gave them some points because he wanted to direct it, and they ended up making,
you know what,
like tens of millions of dollars for not directing E.T.
That yes, I can't remember who that might be.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a sweet deal. Boy, I wish I could fall into something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so Hollywood. If you want me to not direct a film, please call me. I'll do it for cheap. I'll not direct a film for a mere $500,000.
Reasonable.
Yeah, name your price if that's not.
Or anything else?
I mean, that person will never have to work again for the rest of. That story is beginning to percolate in my head now because it seems like.
I think William Stout tells that story, which is probably why you recognize it.
But he wasn't the one who was going to direct it.
No. But
Yeah.
William Stout did. I think he did some. Oh yeah, it was because he was working on Conan at the time, and I think that E.T. was being made in the same area, and so I think knew the person who made this deal. Whatever.
And I feel like the person who made that deal didn't do a whole lot afterwards,
Well,
which
yeah.
makes me the
Well,
person
you
that I
wouldn't.
admire. No, of course I wouldn't. Are you kidding? No, I would be enjoying
Like, I
my
made
life.
$10 million for not
like-
working.
You get out of that rat race and make a fortune for doing nothing. But you know that Spielberg's a generous guy because you know what? Like Amy Irving hasn't had to work a whole lot either.
I'm not sure if I know who that is.
That was his
Didn't want to
ex-wife.
be mean.
That was his ex-wife, and she got like half of everything he made up to the point that they got
God.
divorced, and it was yeah. So
Yeah.
she's been living a happy retired life.
The one other thing I wanted to call out, backtracking just a little bit, this is kind of an interesting line because it does infer that there is more backstory here. Because obviously Furiosa is pretty high up in the hierarchy, and so and especially because, well, I mean he's coming after the women, but he's also coming after her, and he's trying to stop her. Immortan Joe has kind of activated his entire force, and he knows what's going on. But right before she tears his mask off and like throws it into the axle, and I guess like tears the rest of his face off, she has a one-liner that I've always kind of wondered about, because she basically, I think she tears his mask off, or she grabs his mask, and then she says, "Remember me."
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of wondered what that meant, because it's not like she's someone who, I mean, he knows who she's, like I said, she's like one of his, like, basically
top
one of his
lieutenants.
generals. So I don't know. I kind of wonder that line, like, why does she say that specific line right before she kills him?
Is it like sort of a reference to what like the war boys are doing in terms of she's basically saying, almost mocking it, like, remember me when you Valhalla? Is that what she's saying?
But the way she said, she doesn't say it. Okay, and I'm probably reading far too much into it, but she doesn't say "remember me" and then do it right. She says "remember me."
Yeah.
Just the inflection makes it sound like, "Hey, do you remember me?" I don't know.
But it's weird because you're right. It wouldn't make a lot of sense because she is like one of his number one people. But then you start thinking, okay, I mean, doesn't matter. She's got one arm. She's an extremely beautiful woman. Why is she not one of his brides? Other than the fact that she'd probably tear his dick off and make him eat it. But
well, there is that. Again, another interesting thing that is left out, but that is actually covered in the script. She cannot have children. Yeah. So basically, she says he tried to, have children with her, and she couldn't. So he gave her to the head imperator, and then when he died, she inherited his war rig.
But maybe that's it, Bill. You're gonna look, you're gonna go through this prequel, and you're gonna find out that since she couldn't have children, he just chopped her hand off and sent her on her way, and that's gonna be it.
Well, this does not make me want to watch the prequel because it means I'm going to have to watch a whole lot of him and her having sex until they figure out, gosh, this just isn't working. Yeah.
I will say that there, it's always hard to tell if something's taken out of the script, if it's still considered canon or not. So maybe,
I hope not.
But I mean, that does make sense, though. It actually does make perfect sense.
It does.
Like you said, like she's healthy and she's obviously, not. I mean, presumably she lost her arm in an accident, not because she has like some sort of, I don't know,
arm cancer.
Arm cancer, yes.
That's still not her fault. She's still some of the best genetic stock in the whole movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
She was actually born without the arm.
Oh,
there you go.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people with various birth defects and stuff in there. That
it's just her hand. We've taken her whole arm off now.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true.
Yeah. Forearm, is that better? It's not just her hand.
There you go. Yeah, it's like
it's in the whole left side of her.
Oh, listen. If someone chops off my arm at the elbow, I am going to tell everyone that I have lost my arm. I'm not going to get, Technically, I still have half. I got, no, you lost your arm.
I was just gonna say that I'm sorry, I'm still kind of focused on your comment about Remember Me. And I wonder because at that point she's become pretty much useless, I think, to him. So, maybe it's like you've cast me away because I have no use to you and I'm back, bitches. I don't know.
Yeah. And now you have no face. Ooh,
Yeah.
Yeah, you mean that he cast her out before this, or
no, because she was she was his imperator, and she betrayed him by taking the women away, and she really at this point is of no use to him because people are not people to him,
right?
So at that point, did he forget about her, or was he so focused on saving the women he had no he just was done with her. He just tried to have her killed,
Yeah. Oh, that's maybe that's it's as simple as that.
Oh gosh, I'm looking at the pictures now, and you're right. It's like it's not at the elbow. I mean, okay, sure, your arm gets pulled off of the elbow, but that's a joint. But this is like halfway between the elbow and your hand. Oh, that's gonna sting.
As a transradial amputation. So there you go.
Ooh.
Thank you.
That's fancy.
Just in case you wanted to know.
I just want to say that's a hell of a great special effect too. I mean, they've got that down to an art that
wow,
to be able to make things disappear. And
I feel like that was like the first thing that they perfected, though. Like I feel like we talked about Forrest Gump, obviously Gary Sinise in his leg. But I was also watching part of the other day. I was watching part of Starship Troopers, and I realized that there's the Michael Ironside is in that movie, and he doesn't have an arm. So
yeah,
even back in the 90s, they're like, "Hey, you need special effects? We can remove people's limbs."
Because it really is just like, here, put this glove on, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that, for hers, they actually what it looks like is it's actually a lot of it is, it's not, they didn't just replace your complete arm. A lot of it is actually practically there, and then they just use green parts of it to mask out the parts they're going to replace. So probably the tips, the hands are almost like an actual glove, but with the mechanical look to it. And then, so they don't replace the whole thing.
Right.
So, which is kind of neat. But also talking about some of the CGI stuff they do in this. I mean, I know they do.
you said
Oh, God.
They remove the safety rigging and things like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is the canyon. So that final scene when the war rig wrecks, and then the what is it, the doofmobile? What do they call it?
Yeah, the doof. Yeah, I think that's it. The doofmobile.
It's the doof wagon.
The doof wagon. There you go. Thank you, Renee.
Oh man!
So here it is. They're coming down this big canyon, and then there's sort of almost like the little archway they have to get through. If you look at the behind the scenes, it's wild. It is a big, huge, flat, open plain, and then they built part of that archway, but all the rest of it is this big, flat, open plain, and then they fill all the rest of that in with the CGI. But they really do wreck the rig, and they really do bring the doof wagon smashing through it, which is cool. But it's neat that they don't do that in CGI; they just do the canyon sides. So,
right.
I thought that's cool.
And I think they said they basically took that vehicle and loosened everything so that when it fell down, it would just fly apart like it does.
I saw that too, and I don't think I mentioned this, but it was George Miller's idea to add the trumpets and the tubas to the
oh, really?
doof wagon, which doof
no saxophone
is killing me. There was no saxophone. I looked. I actually I might have rewound and replayed it a couple times in slow motion.
Yeah, this is a total diversion. I had already forgot about it until we just mentioned it. I think it was last episode, I think, where we were talking about saxophones and we talked about the sexy sax man from The Lost Boys. We actually made a stunning revelation between that recording and this recording. We went back, Renee and I went back, did some homework. Sexy sax man from Lost Boys also did the sax for We Don't Need Another Hero. And what's the name of the other song?
Oh God.
Yeah, whatever the I can't remember.
It doesn't even matter. That's impressive on its own. Are you serious? I mean,
he did the sax for those songs. He is also in the music videos for both of those songs from Beyond Thunderdome. So there is a direct connection
the
between the
living?
Lost Boys.
Wow.
One of the living, yeah.
Is he dressed the same way basically?
Yes.
In those
Yes.
He is an icon.
I don't think any movie or music video he's appeared in. I don't think he ever allows them to give him a costume. He's like, no, I brought my own, and he just slaps that thing on. The leather, no shirt, gold chains, goes for it. Anyways, sorry, complete diversion, but I just
never
remember that.
Apologize for saxophone. Sorry, what, Helen?
What was that, Ellen?
I said I don't need a costume, just a bottle of oil. That's my costume.
I'm saying if I looked like that and I could play sax like that, yeah, I'd probably have the same
does
costume.
he look like that now? Because there was some time between Lost Boys and...
He's in his I think he's in his like 60s or his 70s now, but he is still playing sax. I think he actually just put out a solo album like 2 or 3 years ago. So
Doing all right.
It's not like running a marathon. You don't get too old to play the sax. You know?
I
mean,
you get too old to play the sax.
Worst, you're standing on the side of the street like Bleeding Gums Murphy with a hat that people throw money into.
Oh, love Bleeding Gums Murphy. You know why they call him? You know why they call him Bleeding Gums, right?
No.
You ever been to the dentist?
No.
Well, he hasn't. Yeah, no, that's the joke.
Okay.
That's what he tells. That's what he tells Lisa. Sorry, and I will say,
gotcha.
Tim Capello is his name. We should actually say his name, because we've now talked about him twice in a row.
Say his name.
That's the sax guy.
Yeah,
Tim Capello.
Yeah, he could be a guest on the show sometime.
Oh my God,
dude!
If we could, he's 65, by the way. So
wait, you're saying that like if we don't hurry up, we're gonna miss our chance.
No. I just saying because we were asking how old he was. No, I'm sure he's still in good health. And you know what? Yeah, let's see if we can get him on the pod.
definitely. I'll make some calls.
You know what? Yeah. Because I'll tell you something. That's the kind of guest you really want to have. You don't want to get Brad so many stories. Pitt, because Brad Pitt's going to sit here and like, oh yeah, everyone I've ever worked with were great, they're terrific, and nothing bad ever happened. No, you want like the character actors or the technical people, the behind the scenes ones, the ones who really don't give a rat's rear end about the fact that they're spilling the beans on all the shenanigans that went on behind the scenes. Yeah, let's get this guy.
I'm on it.
You can forget about your Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. This would be the interview that would just blow the lid off of things.
I'm sure he would really rip Joel Schumacher a new one. Anyways, moving on. So yeah, look forward to that in a coming episode. Renee will be interviewing Tim Capello about all of his work on Lost Boys and Beyond Thunderdome. So
yes, we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, obviously.
More than you know. We'll get to that after the podcast.
All right. Okay.
I'm sorry. A story for after the podcast.
Okay. Do we want to put that on the uncut version for our Patreon that we don't have? Because that sounds good. It sounds juicy.
Yeah.
When you say it like that. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Right.
Okay. Well then, let's get to the end of the movie then, unless anyone has anything else, because I do want to talk to a point that Bill brought up about him just kind of disappearing into the crowd. Because obviously, and I think someone mentioned last time that it's kind of, and this for some reason never occurred to me, but it is kind of foreshadowing in the beginning when they talk about him being a universal donor, and then he obviously gives Furiosa a blood transfusion. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But then they get to they get back to the Citadel, and all the little war boys lower the platform, and they live happily ever after. Yeah. Except for the fact that most of them die of cancer within like 2 to 4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
All men die.
Bill, tell us about your thoughts on Max disappearing into the crowd instead of joining them in the Citadel.
Well, no. I mean, I get it as a film, especially if, as I do, you see this as really maybe the most overt religious allegory possible without it actually being a Bible movie. I mean, the only character who's ever been more Christ-like than Max in this movie is Jesus in any King of Kings, or I mean, he literally gives his blood to Furiosa, who's basically the Saint Paul, I guess, in this story. And so what, when that's all said, I mean, Jesus didn't hang around. He gave everyone what they needed, and then he went home. And so does Max. But I don't understand the logic of it. He's a survivor, and I think the best place to survive was right there in the Citadel. It's got water, it's got food, it's got still at least 4 good-looking women. I mean, there's a lot, and he's going back out into the 2-headed lizard desert. That didn't look like things were going all that great for him in the beginning.
But isn't that kind of his deal? Like, he goes places and saves people, and he's probably also an introvert.
He doesn't really have like a plan, right? I mean, it's not like his.
He just kind of stumbles into things.
I keep saying that I see him as like the Hulk was. The Hulk traveled from town to town, trying to find a cure.
He's exactly
it's not really clear what Max is looking for, but
actually, he was. He mentions it. He's looking for redemption. He's looking for redemption, and so is Furiosa now. And he says maybe we can both find it, and I think Furiosa does find it, and it clearly to Max in his own mind. He still hasn't made up for his missteps or the people he couldn't save or so forth. So to him, I'm just saying to me, that's my take on it, is that Max is like, all right, she's found her redemption. I still haven't found mine yet. I don't deserve to stay here.
He needs more redemption.
But you know what? I'll bet there's going to be lots of opportunities for redemption in this place that's full of food and water. Like maybe some old lady needs to put up some shelves or something. Well, you could do it for her and feel good about yourself.
Although I will say, with Max's with his kind of history, I could imagine the old woman would ask him to put up the shelves, and then he would try to do it, and then the shelves would fall on her, and she'd die, and he'd be like, "Oh, not again." Because I think that the thing about
he's a jinx.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that necessarily, but in a way he kind of is, because when you think about, I think that the reason that he's leaving is because even though he has kind of helped save these people, and he has presumably left the Citadel in better hands than it was in before, he also kind of feels that every time he gets close to people, he puts them in danger. And it's almost like he almost can't bear the burden, because there is really no safe place in the wasteland. There are places that are safer. And I mean, the Citadel is kind of a safe place, but I mean, what happens after this? Like, obviously the people eater is dead and the bullet farmer is dead, but obviously someone's going to take over those places. And like you said, Bill, I mean, they're going to probably be coming to this place that's has a lot of resources. And ultimately, I think that he almost can't bear the burden of not even failing to protect people, but just the burden of having to protect people, right? Because he's let so many people down, and he's just left there so many bodies in his wake that he no longer wants that responsibility, which, I mean, kind of makes sense, because he spends all three of the last movies trying to not be responsible for other people, right? So in a way, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, that's kind of for his character to remove himself from a situation where he will have any responsibility for other people.
This is giving me a good idea for like a Twilight Zone type short story or movie or something. Someone, I don't know, genie, leprechaun, what the hell ever. Someone gets a chance to make a wish, and everyone always screws that up by wishing for something selfish and stupid. And this person wishes to be a great hero to help people, and the wish is granted. But the twist is, these people are only in trouble because of him. He saves people all the time, but it's always something that he ultimately is responsible for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Send those checks to.
So I don't know. I've actually always felt like the end was kind of in character for him. Like, he's not a joiner.
No, I guess not. Yeah. And yet he keeps joining things. Well, I guess he didn't have a whole lot of choice in this one.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's
he got
kind
drafted.
Of the thing. Yeah. Every time he's drafted. And I mean, at this point, he's kind of so mentally broken that I guess the other question is, like, even if he wanted to be part of this community. You know, could he actually change himself into a person who can live with other people? He's been alone for so long. He's had only himself to talk to. You know, the only other people that he has to keep him company are visions of the dead. And whether or not he could actually like rehabilitate himself and actually live with other people is also just, I don't know, another question that I have.
So he is mad. He's Mad Max.
Yeah, it's in the name.
I guess I could just throw out a fun fact. I don't think we talked about it last time, but the scepter that Joe carries was actually his, and it was a gift from his mother-in-law. And there's a scene where he's kind of looking down at it kind of lovingly. And I thought, I wonder if he was thinking about, I don't know, thinking about his mother-in-law lovingly. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could happen. I guess it could happen.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. There was just a lot of symbolism in this. It's a lot. It really is. And biopolitics and necropolitics and just so much symbolism and like the bonding and the almost like an umbilical cord that people are chained to each other. It's a lot.
Now, how old is George Miller now?
I believe he just had a birthday 2 days ago. I believe he is 76 now.
That's right. I forgot you tweeted that.
Yeah, I tweeted. I was looking up and I was like, oh shit, he has a birthday. I better tweet something about that. Which, if you're not following us on Twitter, go to Twitter and search for @VideoJunkiesPod, and you can follow us and you can see all kinds of director birthday tweets. No, I don't know if that's true or not. That's the only one I've ever done, but
You have to admire a filmmaker that has not really had an artistic decline. Seems almost to be going in it is a young man's game. I think that's pretty clear. And a lot of some of my favorite filmmakers, you sort of regret that they, like an aging boxer, you wish they'd maybe quit the game a little bit early. The last few movies just, something's changed. The energy's not there, or the business has changed too much, and or whatever, for whatever reason, it's just it makes you wonder whether they were as good as you thought they were. Then you watch the earlier films, like, there was definitely something there. Yes, Dario Argento, I am talking right about you, sir. But it's a tough thing, and here he's, and not only is he technically better, and doing all this, but he's making films that seem exhausting. I mean, this looks like the kind of movie where if a guy shot it in the prime of life, it would have taken 10 years off of that life. And this guy's shooting it at a time when most people should be retiring.
yeah,
that's something, nice to see, rare to see.
In a way, though, you almost wonder if he's one of these people who is really kept young by doing these things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because I almost wonder. I mean, yeah, like this movie, like you said. I mean, a filmmaker in his 30s or 40s would have been just exhausted by this movie, and apparently he was. I mean, we talked a little bit last time about how long the shooting was. The shooting conditions were pretty miserable. There was a lot of strife on set between Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron and kind of him. I think that there was a lot of frustration with him. Tom Hardy mentioned that he basically didn't really want his actors to go off script, and Tom Hardy was a little bit frustrated with that. And because he said that there was a script that George Miller had essentially written a decade ago, and he was still trying to adhere to it. I can't remember who said it now, but it was someone else on the crew who said, like, at some points it did almost seem like Miller was kind of wasting away making this movie. Then you go watch him like afterwards do it, like talking about it and giving interviews in the press, and I mean, yeah, he seems like he's in the prime of his life. So
yeah, it's like you see the light in his eyes when he's talking about it.
Yeah. I'll bet there were times on the set when he was like wishing he was still working with that pig.
Oh God.
Probably.
Oh boy. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention this at the point when Max asks her what she's looking for and Furiosa says redemption. I kind of had this moment, like the movie really was almost redemption for women in the Mad Max universe. Because up till now, I mean, even up to a certain point in this movie, it's never been a great time to be a woman. There's always kind of some bad stuff going on. And it really was nice. There was a bit of a redemption, I felt.
It doesn't look like a great time to be anybody.
Yeah.
Well, at least the men aren't getting raped,
But no, it's true. Listen, there's no in all of human history, which is full of horrible times. I don't think any of those horrible times were not less horrible for women than they were for any other group. Maybe children, infants, or something. It's hard to even imagine. Look, you can go to the worst parts of the world today, and it's bad for everybody there, but it's worse for the women. Yeah, it's just that's a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
That's not me trying to be, Joe male feminist or anything. That's just a clear obviousness there. Just go pick a country, pick any continent on the world, go to the worst place there, and decide, who you would least want to be. And learn her name because. So yeah, the apocalypse, if it comes, it's going to be a horrible time for everyone, but it's going to be worse for some.
Right, but
I'll
back
be
to
dead,
Renee's.
so it's going to be fine. I'm gonna last 2 weeks in the apocalypse, giving good advice that will all be ignored, and then they will kill me and take my flash drive of survival books.
That's
Well,
right.
back to Renee's point though, is that I mean it's much more a much more positive, I guess, as it were, outcome. I don't know how you want to say it. How did you put it, Renee? And again, I liked how you put it. I mean, why should I even repeat it? Because you actually said it best.
Can we rewind?
Yes. Well, because I mean, I'm just saying I really do agree with you. And what I like about it is it's not. Sometimes films will do that and they'll go, "Look how woke we are. See, we purposely made this movie." It's like, no, it's just organic to this is the story. This is a strong character. She's a woman. This is a strong. It's not a girls will get it done. Hey, we're pandering to you. It's just it's part of the story, and it is that character, which I think makes it all the better. And hopefully we'll see more of that where it's just natural to the story. It's natural, and it's not this. It's not done pandering.
Paul, you hit it right on the head here. I mean, this is like the opposite of most of these woke movies. Even to the point with the fight between Furiosa and Max is a great fight. And it's not one of these fights. I mean, these are all fantasy movies and everything, but I sure hope that women do not take seriously when they see Scarlett Johansson taking on Nathan Jones and kicking his ass. Because if you think that taking a few martial arts courses is going to let you do that, you're going to end up broken. That was a great fight. They were evenly matched, mostly because he's been in bad shape and everything. She's got one arm, which is not an advantage and everything. It goes back and forth. Those two could fight 100 times, and each one could win 50 times.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like Superwoman versus Bruce Lee or something. It felt like a real fight where they really got hurt, and they sold it too, which I like too. That was one of those fights where you felt like the punch that they did a few minutes ago was still being felt by the person.
Really curious.
I hate Hollywood. Yeah, Hollywood fights where people are punching and it sounds like boards are being broken, but as soon as it's over, they're right back to normal. I've fallen down a flight of stairs. I was limping for a week. Okay, and that was just one fall, much less being punched repeatedly in the head. So I think this is good. What do you think Furiosa has to be redeemed for? That's a cool. That's a good cool line. And maybe that is going to be addressed in the prequel. I mean, did she do terrible things?
Well, maybe it's redemption for who she's become, like a servant of the warlord.
Or does she just have survivor's guilt?
I think it's a matter of she has kind of done what she's had to do to survive. Like she was put in the position where she was the imperator, and she has done whatever she had to do, which is, usually probably killing people or, I don't know, maybe even, bringing people back to him or other equally terrible things. But basically she has done things out of kind of a sense of self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder, are some of those women his brides because she's the one that gave them?
Yeah, I mean,
to him?
when a Morton Joe sends you out on an errand, it's not to get milk and bread, right? It's gonna be something bad.
Sending out the
You know,
milk.
I'll bet he'd be pretty happy if you
Yeah,
came back
that's
with
true.
some milk and bread, though.
That's true. He'd be like, "What is this?
I did not expect this.
I sent you out for bullets, but this milk is delicious."
It's your birthday, sir. I didn't think anyone would remember.
Well,
Milk and
actually,
bread.
milk was
Now we can
milk-
make French toast.
milk was one of the things they were trading.
That's true. Yeah,
Oh,
that's what
God.
Renee said. Yeah,
And in fact, Max washes in it. So
yeah, true.
Mother's
Which
milk.
also was kind of symbolic too, in
I was
a
about to say.
strange way. Yeah,
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
because, you know,
You notice that she did not rescue the overweight women who were providing mother's milk, huh?
No,
but you know,
no, they didn't. They didn't need rescuing because remember
They
they
didn't.
turn on the water at the end.
yeah. And apparently there was a scene where they were supposed to kill Corpus Colossus, the little dude.
Yeah,
Oh no!
And I guess they took a bunch of takes, and George was like, "I can't do this."
yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
would
don't
god
blame him.
awful.
Yeah. But it was one of the women, I guess, that was supposed to have killed him.
You know what's funny is the first time I watched it, I swear that he had died. Like I swear remembering him like having a heart attack and dying or something.
Well, he looked like he was going to.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. But when I watch it this time, it's not as definitive. It's just more kind
Yeah.
of like he's like, oh, more like he's having the vapors, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad they rethought that one.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
because it's okay. Yeah, can you imagine when they're divvying up that? It's like, okay, you take on Rictus Erectus, but I'm gonna go take care of the little guy.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta take out some of the smaller war boys too, the little ones too.
Yeah.
Just
Oh.
can't get those,
The war pups. Yeah,
the war pups. Yeah. Actually, you know what bothered me about that? Some of those war pups, the makeup on their eyes was really bad. There was like one or two of them that it was too dark and too large and just looked really bad, and it bothered me. Each time they'd show the war pups, so there was like one or two of those kids.
It.
I'm like,
I liked it.
"Damn
No,
it,
I think that was a deliberate choice to kind of give him that
it's that skeletal look.
that baby skeletal look. That's really
Right.
creepy and all.
It's-
right, but it was like a kid wearing Halloween makeup, not war boy makeup. It didn't look to me. It didn't work. I don't know.
Well,
We
you
could-
know that they're all supposed to be descendants of the I Like Turtles kid, right?
That's the one.
the backstory.
Oh, the best.
That's-
That kid's got to be 30 years old now, right?
Probably.
I saw an interview with him like from shortly after it happened, and I think he was kind of embarrassed about the whole thing. He was.
Do you know how
Oh,
many?
come on,
Do you
kid,
know how many
embrace it.
times that kid's probably like 20 right now. Do you know how many
Oh.
times a day someone comes up to him and says, "I like turtles"?
Hey,
A lot.
hey, look at Rebecca Black. She parlayed it into an actual like career.
Boy.
Oh, God.
So
Yeah.
what can I say?
Yeah.
It's Friday.
That's all.
Oh, it is. And I think the only other thing I had that I wanted to call out, because I actually usually forget this, and I had to kind of make a note of it, because this movie actually ends with a quote, and it's "Where must we go, we who wander this wasteland in search of our better selves?" And it's accredited to the first history man, which I don't think is actually mentioned in the movie. I think he's mentioned in the script. But I kind of thought that was an interesting, and that almost gets back to what I was talking about with, Max is kind of wandering the wasteland almost in search of his better self at this point. So,
Well,
And every time he finds it, he leaves.
yeah. But he needs more redemption.
Mm.
But that kind of works with I was also going to circle back on, not only did she have redemption, but everybody, Max and Nux and even some of the girls kind of transcended their assigned roles of, Nux eventually sacrificed himself, but not to that group, but to people that actually showed some sort of interest in him as a person. And then of course there's Max doing his Max thing, but he was a blood bag at one point. And now he's saving people in a different way.
well, normally we talk about the franchise and legacy of each film. I think we've already talked a lot. I mean, obviously we've talked about the previous installments in the franchise to great detail in previous episodes. We've also talked a lot about the future installments. There is a Furiosa film that apparently Warner Brothers has set a release date in 2023. So we'll see if that happens. Like I said, I remember waiting like 15 years for this movie.
Right.
So
right.
we'll see how long that one takes. And then there's actually a third film, which is, I believe, tentatively titled Mad Max The Wasteland, which I think was part of when they were writing this movie, they actually kind of wrote all three movies together. We also didn't mention, but I will touch on this, one of the other credited co-writers of this and the other two films is Nick Lathoris, who we called out in way back in the first film. He is the mechanic who they stopped to get a new tire from, which I still think is amazing.
Huh.
Wow.
It's kind of interesting that this kind of gave George Miller, who, I mean, he had been directing. I mean, he made the two Happy Feet films, but he has another movie that is, I guess, currently in production called 3,000 Years of Longing. And then he has the other two Mad Max films. So it's almost as if making this movie kind of kickstarted him to work on more projects. I mean, the last time he made Babe Pig in the City in 98, and that was really like the last like full live action feature film that he had made. So
I was just looking up. I hadn't heard of 3,000 Years of Longing, but interesting description. A scholar content with life encounters a genie who offers her 3 wishes in exchange for his freedom. Their conversation in a hotel room in Istanbul leads to consequences neither would have expected. Well, for God's sakes, don't wish to be a hero, because I know how that's going to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it actually sounds like...
Check out this cast, though.
Yeah,
I'm
Idris
guessing
Elba.
the genie, Idris Elba, and I'm guessing the scholar, Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
I could actually see them swapping those.
Absolutely.
Honestly,
that's the great thing. Yeah.
Either one.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to, honestly, that even though it's not a Mad Max movie, I'm really excited that he's making another live action film. Sounds like it could be kind of high concept, so I'm definitely interested.
The cinematographer is the same guy who did Fury Road, and he came out of retirement to shoot Fury Road, and he came out of retirement again to shoot this one.
Oh yeah. So yeah, actually, funny side story. And I know it seems like I have one of these like every episode, but this last weekend I was watching The Last Wave, which is a Peter Weir film. Okay, you've seen that? Then, again, I always watch the credits because it's part of the movie and you got to watch the credits. One of the I think he was the only credited camera operator on that film was John Seal, who is the cinematographer that Bill is talking about. So kind of interesting connection there.
Yeah.
It feels like the Australian film community is a very small.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about these. Anytime you look at these Australian films or exploitation films, you see all these connections because it's a small community. Like we mentioned last time, he also directed he also shot one of the greatest films of all time, BMX Bandits. So I am curious though. So if we mentioned George Miller's getting, he's getting on in his years. He's 76. Who knows how much? I mean, hopefully he can go long enough to make at least 2 more movies. But if he makes Furiosa and or the other Mad Max movie, and then he retires, can anyone think? And I asked these open-ended trivia questions. This is actually one that I did figure out an answer to, but can anyone else think of a director who started and ended their career in the same franchise?
I cannot.
Yeah. The only one I could think of is actually another George. I believe George Romero began and ended his career.
Okay. Well, but let me think.
Didn't he?
Did it though? I mean,
let me think.
Because wasn't his first movie? Wasn't that his first movie?
I think you may be right, because he did other stuff, but those were not features.
Oh, they were commercials and such, weren't they?
Commercials.
He worked in commercials, but that was his first.
So, he did something called the Amusement Park, which is just now getting released, right?
Yeah, that is a film that he shot, I believe, in the 70s, but it's Yeah, the date on it is like this year or last year or whatever, because it never actually got. I think he filmed it for some religious group, and they were so revolted by what he gave them that they never released it. So,
now I
yeah.
really want to see this.
But no,
no,
it sounds amazing. Oh yeah, it sounds
Zach,
amazing.
I think you're absolutely right, Zach. Night of the Living Dead's 1968, and Survival of the Dead 2009.
Yeah. So I think that would be. I would honestly. I hope George Miller makes at least one more movie in this franchise, because I really do think it would be an interesting kind of arc from the original Mad Max to kind of finishing off in essentially the same franchise. But like we've talked about, the franchise has gone so far from the original film to this that it feels, I mean, it is practically a different world, but at the same time there's this interesting, there's connective tissue. Like we said, he even uses a couple of frames of footage, so he hasn't completely forgotten or disowned the original film. So let's rate this. We can, if anyone has a and I say that anyone, like I'm not talking about myself, because I always talk for like 5 minutes in this section, but which I will do again. But we'll do that, and then maybe we can each go around and or when we rate it, we can kind of give our final thoughts on the franchise as a whole and kind of rank them now that we've gone through all 4 films. I think we pretty much know what each and every person will have, but it'll still be kind of fun to recap. I think, speaking of coming full circle and having an arc, I think I actually want to start with Alan, because he's been relatively quiet tonight, but he's kind of alluded to his thoughts on this movie. So maybe we can start with him.
All right, tell me what I'm doing again. I'm doing my I'm doing a rating and where this fits in with the
So you give it a rating out of 5 VHS tapes. You can go on a rant if you would like, and then your overall rankings for the franchise for all 4 films.
Oh, you mean like a collective
like number. 1, 2, 3, 4, like how would you stack them? Yeah.
So I thought about this movie, what I was going to rank it a lot, and I went back between a couple of ratings. Originally, I had said, I'm going to give this 2.5. I mean, I'm sort of fed up with action movies, and this is just another action movie. And then I didn't really think that was completely fair, because I think if I wouldn't have watched any of the other films, I think that this would get a higher rating. It's just, if I had watched, like I have, the first 3 Mad Max films, I would not have watched this. I'd have been like, oh, here's another one, and I'm just not interested in it. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to give this 3. And again, 3 is, it may be low for, huge fans or whatever, but getting a 3 from me for an action movie is actually pretty good. Now, the franchise as a whole, I think I'm going to give that a 3 as well. It's just, I mean, for me at least, this is not really my cup of tea, and it's just kind of middle of the road. I mean, I didn't watch these, other than the first one. I didn't watch these and think, wow, this was just a bad movie that I wouldn't want to see again. The rest of them I thought were entertaining. So that's that. 3 for this one, and I give the whole franchise a 3, which means I'm really not looking forward to another movie in this franchise, unfortunately. I mean, that being said, if they come out with Friday the 13th part 11 or whatever they're up to, I'm there for that one. But I don't know. It's yeah, I'm middle of the road on this.
Much like Max's wife when she got ran down in the original Mad Max.
Yes. Too soon.
Hey, you know what, Paul? When Max says that he's looking for redemption in this movie, do you think that it's actually the director speaking through the character and saying that he was looking for redemption with the fans from Beyond Thunderdome?
No.
Ooh.
No. Okay, well,
No.
I think he was, and I would like to hear whether the biggest Thunderdome hater of all, whether George Miller found redemption with you. So let's go to you and let's get your final thoughts.
Oh, I think he certainly found redemption with me with this. Well, I mean, he found redemption with me with Babe Pig in the City, but But anyway, no, definitely. It's well, no, it is. I'm not joking. It's like that film, but
It's a good movie. It's cute.
it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, this is a full 5 out of 5. Again, it's an action film that you can actually tell what the hell's going on. This is like one of its greatest virtues, and like you said, because he sped it up and he slowed it down, he tweaked everything, so you can actually follow the action. It's amazing. It's epic. I usually don't like watching films, multiple times if I've seen them recently, but this is one I could because it's so well done, and it really is the pretty great. Overall, when you average it out, the series is great. I don't know if I'd give it, and I'd have to go through and see what my individual rankings are if we want to do an average on them. But if you want to rank the movies in it, it really is hard to decide which is first, either this or Road Warrior. I mean, this is such a different orders of magnitude in terms of the action, but also in terms of the money that was spent and the technology compared to Road Warrior. I think they're both fantastic as they are. I could weenie out and put them, they tie for first. Though if you held a gun to my head and I had to pick one over the other, I'd say this over Road Warrior, but Road Warrior is super close. The original Mad Max is good. It's definitely quite a different film, but at the time it seemed so it's still pretty high up there. So that comes in a very close third, and those are great movies. So yeah, that's how I feel about the series.
Cool.
There's the 3 films of the series.
Yeah. No, I got you.
Well, okay, 3.5 films.
3.5 films. Yeah.
Is he too subtle?
What?
Are you being too subtle? You didn't pick it.
Yeah. The 3.5 films. So yeah. I mean, I like the first half of Thunderdome, and there are some things to appreciate about it, but the second half, yeah, forget it. Anyway, I pass it off. There we go.
Great.
Those are my thoughts.
So
was I supposed to say something about how I thought the future of it, what I would look forward to, or?
Oh, you can if you want. I mean, Alan said he's not looking forward, so maybe we can balance.
Oh no, the only thing I'd say is I'm interested in a Furiosa film. I'd be much more interested if it was a sequel, a continuation of Furiosa, not a prequel. Prequels, like Bill said, are problematic at best. But I'll still watch it because I'm interested in see what he's to do with it. It'll be interesting to see what Anna Taylor-Joy does with the character. I'm kind of glad they're not doing a TV series with it because I just wouldn't want to see that. So there we go.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If HBO Max announced that they were doing a big budget Mad Max series, I would be ecstatic, honestly, as long as George Miller was involved. But yeah, I think that this franchise does belong on the big screen as much as possible. Renee, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that this was the first time that you had watched a couple of these films. So I'm interested, now that we've gone through all of them, to hear your final thoughts on Fury Road and on the franchise as a whole.
Oh boy. Fury Road. Well, I did what Bill told me to do, and don't tell my parents. I took my chair and I sat really, really, really close to the TV to emulate the theater experience as much as I possibly could. Boy, that was it. It was just like you said, I think I sat kind of curled up, with my hands to my face through almost the entire movie. And you're just like, am I breathing? What's happening? I'm just very caught up in this. It's a, like I said, I have a hard time putting my thoughts together on this because there really is just so much going on. And then there's, like I said before, all the symbolism, and this is just like we had talked about. I believe it was Beyond Thunderdome. For this movie, it was the more that I kind of, I'm a researcher. I like to learn stuff. So, I kind of dig in on it. And the more I learn about it, the more, I see other people talk about it and their impressions of it. It just brings me in even more. And, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely give this movie a 5. And I really I think echo Paul's sentiments, a bit of an up and down journey. The first one, it was the first time that I remember watching it. So it really was kind of the first time I watched it, though there was definitely the scene where, Max throws the guy the axe and he's like, all right, cut your hand or something like that. Like, you can cut your arm off or you're donezo. I distinctly remember having seen that as a kid, which is in one of our future podcasts of Who Was Watching Me. And that's also what I watch.
Now we know why
down.
Now we know why. Oh, yeah, oh God! Don't even get me started. Now we know why you identify with the feral kid, though.
Yes, and see, and again, it's uncomparable, right? Because my boy he's in the second one. It's a whole different movie. It's just so different, and so up and down. I think overall, I would give the entire series probably a 4 VHS tapes.
Great. I love it. And we
and
are
I guess
going to
I missed it. What did she give this movie?
A 5.
Yeah.
This was a 5.
I'm sorry, Alan. I'm sorry.
That's
Paul gave it a 5 too, so get on him.
Alan, that's the number every sane person is going to give this. Just a spoiler alert for you.
Spoiler alert. And yeah, at some point we're going to have to do a mini episode on Watership Down and bad childhoods because me same. Bill, I know that you are a longtime fan of this franchise. Have at it.
Okay. Well, first, my rant. Okay, so the reason I put magicians in there with makeup supply salesmen and the music industry is because these crooks prey on children. So, like, you see this thing, the magic disappearing coin. Make a coin disappear and reappear in someone's ass. And I'm just a stupid kid. I think that's a good way to meet girls. Yeah.
What magicians are you going to?
We got some deep scars here.
I send my money away, and I know I'm in trouble when I get an envelope, and it's not a heavy envelope either. And you open up, and a slip of paper falls out describing how you're supposed to do this nonsense. And I swear to God, not making this part up, the first line is, make the coin disappear by your favorite method. I don't have a favorite method of making coins disappear. That's why I paid you money to tell me how to make it work. That's half the trick. And you're just like leaving me on my own. All right, so 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 on the film, obviously.
I don't understand that segue, but okay.
Yeah. So
it's
magic. It's great. It's magic. Oh God. And listen, hey, if there's any young men out there, let me tell you something. Magic is, you could be the best magician in the world. You do not meet girl. The only girl you're going to meet is the one you con into being your magic assistant, which. Okay, that might actually work. Now that I'm saying this, I should have thought about that. But no, it's not a way to meet. Girls are not impressed by it. But it's still a hell of a lot better than becoming a ventriloquist. For the love of God, don't do that. Just don't. Kill that industry. Strangle it in its crib. You'll be a serial killer at best. The only girls you're going to meet are the ones buried in your basement.
We're losing our audience now, Bill.
Magicians are above ventriloquists, right?
Oh, listen, everyone is above ventriloquists. I'm only. Don't talk too loud. Listen. The scare. No, it's terrifying, and there's never been a good ventriloquist movie because the problem is whenever they do this, the opening scene is always the ventriloquist act. And everyone's laughing, and it's not funny. It's not even remotely funny. There's nothing funny about their act, and yet everyone is laughing. You're like, am I insane? Am I crazy? But there's a movie called Charlie McCarthy Detective, and it's Edgar Bergen, who is the greatest ventriloquist of all time, because most ventriloquists like practice so that they don't move their lips when they're doing this. He was a radio ventriloquist. I'll say it again. He was a radio ventriloquist. If you could see the expression on my face, I mean, I've been living with this horrible knowledge for like 60 years, and it still boggles my mind that this man was one of the greatest entertainers of his time as a radio ventriloquist. You people know how radio works? So consequently, he never learned any of the tricks about not moving his lips. Well, then movies came along and they said, hey, let's get that Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. We'll have to pay them both. But, and they get him on there. And his lips are moving more than mine are right now. It was incredible. And yet, nobody cared. No one ever looked at Edgar Bergen. They always looked at Charlie McCarthy. They thought he was real. And this movie, Charlie McCarthy Detective, takes it to the ultimate extreme, where in the entire movie, everyone believes that Charlie McCarthy is a real person. He's solving crimes. At one point, he gets shot. And as God is my witness, there's a scene where the doctors are operating on him and they're putting a gas mask on his
We've got to do
face.
this movie next.
I think we get stuck in a quagmire.
Bill,
Oh
here's
my
my
God.
question. Here's my question as it pertains to Charlie McCarthy Detective.
Yes.
How do you think you would stack that film against the 4 films in the Mad Max franchise?
Well, I don't think that's entirely fair, because I think that movie is not of this earth. I think Charlie McCarthy Detective came from the same universe that Roadhouse, the movie Roadhouse, which is another one we should do, because attention must be paid. Where in the movie Roadhouse, if you remember, it takes place in a universe where bouncers have the same social status as doctors. Also, Ben Gazzara gets the prettiest girl in town, because as would happen in real life, someone who looks like Ben Gazzara would be dating a doctor who would rather be dating a bouncer, because she wants to
How
marry.
do we get to Roadhouse again? Let's get
Speaking
back
of
on the
Roadhouse,
road, Bill.
how about that Road Warrior.
Road Warrior, the Mad Max.
yeah.
Okay, so this is
the
this
Warriors. Let me tell you about the
Warriors.
Warriors.
The Warriors come out and play.
God.
Great. This is a 5 out of 5. But if I had to rate them, I still have to. I'm a sentimental guy, as you know. I had to put Road Warrior first. It's one of my great loves. It's one of the movies that made me love cinema even more than I did before I went to see it, which was already pretty considerable. I love that movie. I think Fury Road is, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's technically way better movie. It's one of the most technically amazing movies. It's visionary. It's terrific. If I had to pick which one to watch right now, Fury Road. No, but I've watched Road Warrior like at least once a year, every year since it was released. There's probably very few movies I've watched more than Road Warrior. So, I'm kind of familiar with every frame of it at this point, whereas Fury Road I've only watched about 5 times. I'll still put Road Warrior first and Fury Road like a hair behind, a photo finish, let's say. Mad Max way behind those two, but I still like it for what it is. But it's such a different movie. It almost feels like not part of this. It's certainly the one that got things going, but then it's like Dr. No compared to what a James Bond movie is now. It did get started, but it's a whole different species. And then Distant, far, far away. I can sort of see the glint of light from Thunderdome.
From Bartertown. Yeah.
Bartertown. Yeah. Which just, I just don't see.
So let me just make this
I don't
clear.
see the purpose.
Everybody
Yes.
here thinks
Except
that
you.
the first movie is better than Thunderdome?
Oh, I do.
Not everybody.
I must be a magician or a ventriloquist then.
I haven't gone yet.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Zach hasn't given his wrong opinion on this, but
Oh,
I mean,
well.
in fairness, Thunderdome has a lot going for it and everything. And if it was the only movie, if Thunderdome was the only Mad Max movie, I'd say, man, that was a great movie. They should have made more on that character and everything. And Mad Max, the original Mad Max, again, is such a different fish. It's almost crazy to put it in the franchise, it seems. But that's the ratings I would go, and they're all good. They're all at least good. Some of them are great, and some of them are spectacular.
Mm.
I think you could block the children things out of your mind from Thunderdome. It's a better movie because when I think of Thunderdome,
Yeah,
that part was like so ridiculous. I don't think about it. But if I think about
I just feel like Thunderdome was a retread of Road Warrior and didn't bring enough new to the game. And I'd probably feel the same way about Fury Road if they'd done that, but they didn't. They just went completely off the rails. I mean, it's bigger and better, and there's just And will I go see Furiosa? I'll be there opening day. I've got reservations about the whole premise. But when a visionary filmmaker shares a vision, you go see it. Maybe I'll feel like I wish they'd done something different or so. But God knows what we're going to see with that one. tap dancing saxophonist on a crane or something. Who knows?
Which is exactly what Renee and I are looking for in the next movie.
Exactly.
So we'll be there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, Zach. I'm glad you picked this franchise because it's been a lot of fun. And
I agree.
Any excuse to watch them, and so it's been fun talking about it with you guys.
Well, Bill, I appreciate that rant because now I think that you actually have the longer rant than I will. Mine will also
good.
not be about. Although I will say I've never actually seen it, but isn't Magic with Anthony Hopkins supposed to be pretty good?
It's
a very good movie. It's a very good movie, but tell me I'm wrong. Watch the movie and tell me that the opening act with Anthony Hopkins with that dummy, that dummy is not terrifying, scary, and people should be running. The audience watching his act should be running from the theater, crying and screaming and having long sleepless nights. But no, they're laughing. They're laughing at his unfunny, scary jokes.
I did give you that.
Well,
that is true.
I'll check it out and we'll cover it on a future episode. In the meantime, I'm probably going to reiterate what I opened the first episode with, which is by saying that I essentially waited 15 years to watch this movie, more or less, and it still exceeded my wildest expectations. I think that this movie is the perfect example of a director who is at the top of his game, working with a crew that is at the top of their game. I think that this is essentially high art doused in gasoline and set on fire. And I mean that in the best possible way, because this is an art film. This is an action film. This is an artist who has spent 30 years perfecting his craft. And essentially this is the culmination of it, which, I mean, if he decided to retire after this movie, I would actually be fine. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. I think that this is, I mean, obviously, of course, this is even though this movie was never actually released on VHS, it's still going to get 5 of them because this is the perfect movie. Even though there are things, I think there are things that I don't love about this movie. There are nitpicks that I have. There are things that I wish they had done differently, but ultimately it's the sort of movie that the sum of its parts are greater than any shortcomings. I will also say I want to retcon. I think I gave Road Warrior a 4.5 after reviewing this. Because I felt like I needed to go higher for Fury Road. I actually think I like Fury Road. I think Bill, like you said, they're neck and neck. I think I'm actually going to retcon and say Road Warrior is a 5. I think that both of these films are 2 of the best action films of their respective generations. I think that Mad Max, the original, and Thunderdome are behind. I think they are also tied because I think they each have their strengths and weaknesses. I think they're still both great movies. I think they're both still 4s. But again, even though it's not 5s across the board, I think the franchise is just a solid 5 because I actually believe that there is probably no other franchise that is consistently this good, in my opinion. Even if you hate Thunderdome, even if you don't like the original, I mean, it's just they're still not bad movies. And I think that they are still all watchable any day of the week. So yeah, I'm going to say 5 out of 5. That means that we are at an average of 4.6 for this panel, meaning this is the highest rated film we have talked about so far. Still,
take out the French judge, it's a solid 5.
I was going to say still 4/10 lower than it should be, but that's fine. So yeah, that's it. Anyone have any final thoughts, or do we want to wrap up?
I'm just glad I could bring that average down a little bit, just like in school. Bring it down.
Oh man. Well, we've spent a lot of time in the wasteland. We've now been talking about this franchise for, I think, actually, given the fact that it took us so long to start releasing episodes, this has been a couple of months. So I think, and yeah, I'll edit this part out if we end up not doing this, but I think that for our next episode, we are going to visit a slightly sexier, slightly more stylish future, because I think we're going to talk about another movie that I kind of love from my childhood, and I think it's kind of held up. I think if everyone is on board, we're probably going to discuss The Fifth Element.
Ooh, yeah.
So,
I'm actually interested. This is actually one that I've seen, but
Okay.
God, Yeah, but I mean that doesn't mean anything. I remember a girl with red hair and Bruce Willis. I mean, I saw this way back when it came out.
She had orange hair, so
she had
okay. See,
hair.
I'm already. It's already a new movie.
Huh.
No,
greatest cosplay inspiration ever.
Oh God, yes. I think in 2 weeks, I think you can come back and we are going to have a full-length episode kind of dissecting that film and talking through it. It is, God, I guess it's been almost 25 years since that movie came out. It's one of the first films I can really remember seeing and loving in theaters. So it's going to be fun to revisit it. It's been, honestly, I think it's probably been a good 15 years since I've watched it. So we'll see if it holds up. In the meantime, we're also doing weekly mini episodes where if you run out of things to watch, we give you recommendations that kind of cross the board of genres and streaming services. So, check those out if you're looking for something to watch. Paul tells a lot of very personal life stories and those things. So if you are interested in the continuing saga of Paul Cardillo, definitely tune in. And anyone else have anything they want to say? Bill, do you want to plug any of the other podcasts that you take part in?
Yes, Decades of Horror, the 1970s, and Decades of Horror, the 1980s of Gruesome Magazine. And I have been invited to participate in 2 Decades of Horror, the classic years, probably because they thought I'd sulk like a child if I wasn't invited to do Planet of the Vampires by Mario Bava.
Oh yeah.
And this one, Jeff Moore, was so sweet to call me. He said, "What's your favorite movie again?" I'm like, Eyes Without a Face, the 1959 Georges Franju movie and he goes, "Yeah, we're gonna do that one. You're welcome to come." So it's like, yeah. So that is a great movie.
Oh yeah.
Leyu Sans Visage. Yeah, I don't know. It's French, but
I saw it in the theaters.
Really?
I saw it in the theater just like last year, and the guy 2 rows down from me actually fainted during the film.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, he actually passed out. Yeah. You know exactly what scene it was.
Oh, I know exactly the moment it happened.
Yes. He actually passed out. So
right, 19. So I mean, yeah. So what a kick in the nads that must have been in 1959. Yeah. It's, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil anything. It's been ripped off probably 11,000 times, but it's still just an amazing horror movie. You probably
and what was it called again?
It has a few names. Eyes Without a Face is like the literal translation of Leyu Sans Visage. And again, if I'm mispronouncing that, I'm not French, okay? And it also,
I am.
because
I'm a French judge.
Yeah, yes, right. And because Americans are Americans, they also renamed it the Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus and put it on a double bill with The Manster. Now, don't get me wrong. The Manster is a great movie. The Manster is one of my favorite movies, but it has absolutely nothing in common with Eyes Without a Face. That's
I heard they were also going to put it on a DVD with The Man with Two Hands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. But they decided to go with The Beast with 10 Fingers, and
I think they were actually going with
we got to mention it.
Yeah, they were going with the American ripoff, the Face with Two Eyes. So, well, I actually haven't seen Eyes Without a Face, and I know for a fact that it is now. Yeah, I know for a fact that it is now streaming on HBO Max. So I think I'm going to check that out. Yeah, and then I will be tuning into Decades of Horror to see what Bill has to say about it. So, and you should too. Talking to the listeners, not you guys.
I love this movie. This movie is so great. I love this movie. Everyone should see this movie. I love this movie. Yeah.
Well, that's been me for the last 5 hours talking about Fury Road.
Something terrible. I'm way more entertaining when it's Charlie McCarthy detective, where it's like, oh my god.
Well, I think we're also going to kick up a side series on bad movies that we don't like, and so maybe we can do Charlie McCarthy detective, and you can, even though you spent like half this episode talking about it, you can do more.
I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said it's awful.
Bad movies, bad movies in general. They can be ones we like too. So,
well, until next time, I think that's it from us. Stay safe. Enjoy the next movie that we talk about, Fifth Element. Go watch it right now, and then tune in 2 weeks. Yeah, I think that's it. Good night.
Bye.
Night, everybody. Well, we did it again. What was that? 3 hours? No, 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
Well,
There you go.
hey, to be fair, we would have come in on time if it hadn't been for all the Charlie McCarthy detective talk.
Fair
I'm
enough.
not complaining.
Fair enough.
And this concludes, I think, about 11 hours of discussion about this franchise. Hopefully we aren't done yet, because look for our Furiosa coverage, hopefully coming in 2023. In the meantime, we'd love to hear what you think about Mad Max Fury Road and the franchise as a whole. Visit us at videostorejunkies.com to contact us by email, and you can check out our other content while you're there, or follow us on Twitter at VideoJunkiesPod. We may be done talking about the Mad Max franchise, but we are not done talking about our favorite films. Grab your multi-pass and join us again in 2 weeks for our next full episode, where we'll be talking about the stylish 1997 sci-fi adventure film, The Fifth Element. Until then, don't forget to rewind those Betamax tapes and re-sleeve those Laserdiscs. Good night.